Hey everybody, what's up? I am Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today on this beautiful Friday afternoon, TGIF, with another episode of Honest HR Nitrous. This is the live stream I do a couple of times weekly where it's basically a live Q&A. So I rely on questions from you guys and I answer them to the best of my ability to try and help you out. That's the whole point. So if you are a subscriber of my YouTube channel for any amount of time, you should be able to get in the chat and ask me a question. You should be able to see it somewhere near the vicinity of my video feed, depending on what device you're watching this on. And I'm just going to adjust the brightness of my camera here because it is a partly cloudy day. As I always say, I would love to have been a weatherman. Then I could tell you that there's a 50% chance of it being partly cloudy, that kind of thing, and then pick up my check. Yeah, the title of today's episode of Honest HR Nitrous, this is episode 104, and it's called Live Career Clinic. Fix your job search now. So yes, if you are engaged in job search, if you're trying to find a job and you're not really getting anywhere fast and you suspect it might be because you're going about it the wrong way, you got questions, let me know. I'm here to help you. That's what this is all about. Special shout out goes out to my YouTube channel members. You guys are awesome. Thank you for the support. And also my Patreons and my super thanks donors. Those are always fun to get. And to you guys, my viewers and my participants. You guys rock. And Krista Rabraka is here. Says hello, Krista. I'm sure I'm saying your name wrong. That's just how it goes. I say everybody's name wrong. I say everybody's name wrong equally. So it's a fairness kind of thing. And consistency is very important in more ways than one. So yeah, get in the chat. I have no agenda of what to talk about. I'm here just to answer your questions. So, get in the chat, let me know. Just came off a live stream because I was a bit nervous about the live stream I just did an hour ago, talking about corporate fraud and this kind of thing. Fascinating topic for me. I didn't know if anyone else would be interested, but we got quite a few people show up and ask questions and participate and stuff. So that was really cool. Krista says, I've watched so many of your videos. Thank you. They are awesome. You did a great job saying my name. Oh, awesome. That's good to hear. And thank you, Krista, for your words. That's good to know. I'm glad that they're at least somewhat useful and that people are getting something out of it. I don't know. It's like I kind of look at a lot of videos myself on YouTube. I kind of just see what's going on. And to be honest with you, a lot of talking head videos, for me personally, they just don't do it for me. There's a lot of people sensationalizing like mundane things and then people like over explaining basic stuff that's kind of self-evident. At least that's what it feels like from my perspective. And then on top of that, there's a lot of just plain misinformation. People trying to make you believe there's conspiracy theories when there aren't, it just, a lot of that kind of stuff. For some reason, YouTube keeps showing a lot of that kind of stuff in my feed. So I don't know if anyone else is seeing that too, but that's kind of my impression. So that makes Krista's compliment all the more powerful because there's like a sea of crap out there. So, that's the deal. As long as they're helping you, achieve your goals in some small way. That's what I was hoping for. So, yeah. And I'm always open to suggestions, and I can't always cover everything for everyone. So that's why I do these live streams. They're my equivalent of like, instead of responding to written questions and comments, which I do get a lot of, I just can't type out long answers and things. This is my sort of attempt to cover that stuff. So yeah, get in the chat. Let me know if you are engaged in job search and it's not going anywhere fast. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what you can do, what you might not be doing in an optimal kind of way, and what what can be done to fix that, or you just want to discuss the results, and see if the results you're getting or what you're seeing is what other people are getting and what other people are seeing also. That's pretty important. Knowing that helps us understand if we're at fault, we're maybe not doing things that we should, or it's something that, it's not caused by our technique or something. It's something endemic to the system that other people are experiencing too, in which case that would suggest different solutions. So that's why it's important to diagnose these things. While we're waiting for questions to roll on in, check out my other two channels. A lot of people don't realize I have a couple of other channels there. You can see them right here. There's the Company's Expert 2 for job seekers. So just even more of my stuff. If this wasn't enough for you, then you can get even more. So go and check that out, subscribe. And the Company's Expert 3, which is a tiny channel, it's extra stuff for the business and entrepreneurial stuff that I do. So if you're interested in that stuff, exploring working for yourself or higher level business or management or leadership concepts, that's where I put a lot of the extra stuff right on there. So you could check that out. Yeah, I got a comment in the last hour. I saw it 15 minutes ago, something like that. And I can't remember, it's not in front of me, but someone was saying that they went to a job interview and they sat down and the interviewer told them, they said, "Impress me." And then they folded their arms and just sat back in their chair and didn't say anything else. Just impress me. And they were saying, well, what the hell question is that? Like, how do I respond to that? And I was saying, and I did respond. I said, just a very quick response. I said something to the effect of, that is a kind of arrogant version of saying, what's your greatest accomplishment or what are your strengths? It's the strength question, right? So what really helps people do well in interviews is if you go to the interview and okay, mental prep, I'm going to go to that interview and I'm going to tell them this, and this. This is what I want them to know. These are my strongest points that will make a good case for me, and those are going to vary by job, actually. So depending on what they've asked for in their job description, you would say, okay, based on what they've said their requirements, I know they're tuned into the stuff. I'm going to make sure I say these things that I've done, and convey that. So if they ask you a question like this, some weird question out of left field, and they say, just impress me or, whatever, it's like, that's a great time to bring out one of those things that you had prepared yourself to say. I'm going to say this in the interview. Bring out one of those right there, Krista says, I'm 4 months into a layoff and super frustrated. I have a career coach and believe I'm doing everything possible to land an offer. I'm getting to final interviews, but not selected. Suggestions? Okay. Well, now, depending on where you are and what stage of life and everything you're at there, Krista, hopefully you're doing a lot of your job search in the hidden job market. That's where all the action is, right? So, there's the world of posted jobs, right? And this is like a separate world where you got to deal with resumes, you got to deal with applications, you got to deal with, using AI to customize resumes and cover letters, things like that. It's the world of job interviews with recruiters, like formal job interviews, where they ask you formal questions like, tell me about yourself and what are your weaknesses, right? So that's like one whole world, right? And then over here is another world. It's the world of the hidden job market, which is considerably larger, where there's much more jobs. The jobs are of generally much better quality. And you when you play in that world, you're not dealing with recruiters for a start. You're dealing with hiring managers that are essentially just managers of a department, the department in which you'd work, and executive managers, And most companies are small, depending on what country you are in the world. Most countries, you find that most employers are small employers, like where I am in Canada, and in particular in Manitoba, 85% of companies are small, right? So don't be fooled by when you go downtown and you see all the skyscrapers and stuff. It's like, yeah, you're seeing a lot of big companies, but you're only seeing the big ones, and there's considerably more employers that are small. And by small, I mean anything under 500 employees. So we're not talking small like 5 employees. We're talking about 500 employees, right? So usually those companies, they don't have the budgets to really promote jobs far and wide and do great big like selection campaigns, right? So make sure you're focusing most of your effort into the hidden job market. That's where all the jobs are. Now, don't take my word for this. We could easily do some ChatGPT queries to show you this is indeed the case. Things like direct outreach are a way to access those. Things like informational interviews with a delayed ask. That's another way of accessing those. Those are 2 methods that I wholeheartedly recommend. I did a video a month ago. You can see it on my channel. It's called How I'd Get a Job. And I cover 11 different methods of job search. So I'm not saying you need to do 11 different methods, but I'm saying that, maybe 1 or 2 of those might give you some ideas that you might want to engage in because they are useful. Okay, so you can kind of tell me, give me more information. Are you looking in the hidden job market? Are you doing some of these activities? Or are you exclusively responding to posted jobs, going through recruiters, competing with like 800 other people for like every job? Let me know. AJ Singh says, watched your videos and passed the interview and got a teacher job. I also got another interview on Thursday. Okay, so you got a job, and then you've got another interview for a different job, presumably. Right on. Go to that interview and forget that you've already got a job or whatever, and get this second job. And then you'll have 2 offers on the table that you can consider side by side. If you've already accepted the first job, go and get an offer for the second one, and then you can maybe renegotiate, or you can just take the second one if it's better. The more options, the merrier. Congratulations, AJ Singh. That's great news. Matthew Harding says, I've always heard that a candidate is more attractive, desirable to recruiters if they are currently employed in that position versus being unemployed, regardless of circumstances. True? Yes, generally speaking. You heard this, huh? Well, we all know that what you hear is always true. So always remember that. That's the life lesson here. Yeah, do you know why? It's because they assume it's the same reason they don't like work gaps. It's because if you're not currently working, they think there's a chance that there's a reason why you're not currently working. It could be that there's something really wrong with you that they haven't detected yet. So they regard you as a higher risk candidate, right? If someone's currently working, then they conclude, perhaps falsely, that, oh, well, they're a perfectly good employee. They're holding down a job, This is all flawed thinking. Just like everything that recruiters do, it's all based on stereotypes and assumptions, right? Recruiters are also they don't care about hiring the best candidate. They're not looking for the best candidate. They're looking for the least risky candidate. So when you look at everything through the lens of risk, these things start to make sense. So you can see where they're coming from, right? They don't make sense if you're going on the assumption they're trying to find the best person, right? What does it matter if you're currently employed or not? That, you could be temporarily out of work, and be brilliant. That does happen, or maybe you've been underutilized in a previous job. They had you sweeping the floors or something when you got a PhD. You know what I mean? So like none of these things make sense if you're thinking in terms of like performance. But if you're thinking in terms of risk, then they make sense. And that's mainly the lens that recruiters use. World Ends with a Whimper says, how much of AI should I use in my online job application? You don't need to use any, but what matters is the results. So for example, if you can apply to a job, hopefully you know that customizing your resume to that job, especially if you're, this is once again in the world of posted jobs, right? Where they're getting like 800 applicants, right, for each job. So when you're getting 800 people, you can afford to be really picky. And you say, I'm not going to interview anyone that isn't an exact perfect match, right? So that being the problem, then how do you become an exact perfect match? Well, you take your resume and you tweak it based on what they are asking for. You make sure that you speak to exactly what they said that they are looking for explicitly. You put that stuff front row center, and you tend to de-emphasize or eliminate things that aren't what they're looking for, because it could become a dilution or a distraction, right? You don't seem like the perfect fit. If you've got what they need, but you've also got these other things over here, that might not be an exact fit. Whereas someone who's got the exact thing they're looking for, period, seems like a better fit, right? So customizing applications is the way to go if you are going after posted jobs, right? Now, if you're doing your customizing manually, you could do what? Maybe 5 of those a day tops, something like that. Like, it's very labor intensive. If you use AI, you use like ChatGPT, then you could go and easily do 100 custom cover letters and custom resumes if you wanted to. You'd be working from dawn to dusk kind of thing, like, but you could do it, right? So AI can help you with that, so you don't have to use it, but applying to 100 jobs, all things being equal, you'll have a higher chance of getting something than applying to 3 jobs in a day, right? Or 5 jobs in a day. It's easier to apply if you're applying for 100 jobs in a day that are all customized. The chances of you getting something soon go up, right? So AI can help you with that. Now, you don't have to play this game. You don't have to always just compete in the posted job market. A lot of people don't, 80% of the jobs are in the hidden job market. So a lot of people just look there, and you don't really need, I don't think you need to use AI there. There's no clear advantage, at least not in its current form that I'm aware of. Once AI can start actually sending out messages on your behalf, then that's something else, like on LinkedIn or whatever, then maybe, and it can do queries, link that to do queries on Google Maps, find employers, link that to the individuals and the companies on LinkedIn, automatically send them out messages. Like, if it could do all that, hey, then that would be perfect. But I don't think it can do any of that stuff right now. So, I mean, which is kind of surprising. I haven't seen it. That doesn't mean it can't do it, but it's kind of surprising if that was true, it can't do that. It seems like that wouldn't be too much of a stretch. So hopefully that makes sense. Keish Richards says, hi, thanks for your work and I like your positive attitude. This perspective about small companies and big buildings make job searching and applying less intimidating. That isn't what I meant, but that is a thing that happens. A lot of, my point was that you see a lot of big prominent buildings as you drive or, cycle around your city. And it's deceptive because for every one of those, you get multiple small employers that are also looking for people, right? So, like if you just drive around the city, you see Walmart, you see, I don't know what you see. You see banks everywhere. You see, what's the company that makes the furniture? Is it Norwegian or Swedish furniture? Anyway, you see them. You know what I mean? But it's deceptive because, like, the vast majority of employers you don't see. They're not visible. They're off in the industrial parks, or they're off like just outside the city, or something like that, right? So, or they're hidden away somewhere. So that's the thing. The employment landscape is quite a bit different than what it appears if you're just visually looking at where you live. Now you can get on Google Maps and you can do the Google Maps thing that I've done several times, where you find your employers by doing a search on Google Maps, and you see like it just peppers the map with all these different types of companies and organizations that could employ you, right? So that's a great way of targeting these people, and then, it already gives you the company, what they do, their contact information, like all that's right there. You cross-reference that to LinkedIn. LinkedIn, you see inside those companies, to the individuals. You see, here's the owner, here's the manager, here's, and then you contact the manager, and then there's a variety of reasons of strategies for what you could say. We're going to get into that. Krista says, yes, using the hidden job market as well. Okay. Well, good. We'll just keep at it then. There's a lot of different methods, so keep at it. I mean, direct outreach, that would, like, assuming you don't live in like a tiny village or something, that should keep you busy for a long time. There's a lot of employers out there, and there's a lot of people in those companies or organizations. I mean, I live in a city that's like 0.8 million people, it's not that big, but I would never be able to contact all the people, that you could find. Like I would be there, I'd be contacting people, like 100 people a day for weeks and weeks and weeks, before I started to run out of people, out of targets, So, I mean, if you live in like New York or something, my God, and that's just on like LinkedIn, like a lot of people are not on LinkedIn, and then some people are they're on LinkedIn, but they're not on LinkedIn. They have a profile and stuff, but they're not there checking messages and being active on it. There's a lot of those, right? AJ says same job, more money. Oh, okay. Well, that's still good, right? Keish Richards, IKEA. Yes, that's it. Thank you. I had a senior moment there and couldn't think of the name. Yeah, that's the place that sells the furniture with the little instructions written in Swedish so that it's like gobbledygook, and then you just try and put it together any way you feel like and have it fall apart on you a week later, that kind of thing. World Ends with a Whimper says, for an entry-level tech job, is using networking a much better strategy? Absolutely. It's better across the board. Yeah, much better. AJ Singh says, the feedback that I got was that they enjoyed the question that I asked them. I used the question that you had on your videos, the 30, 60, 90 days, and what's the vision for this company? Okay. I took notes you took notes in the interview. Did you like read your notes like right off the palm of your hand, like when they were asking you questions? Hopefully not. But hey, it worked. Don't question it. Just trust the process, and just give yourself a pat on the back, regardless of whether you deserve it or not. You did deliver the goods. You delivered the bacon, You can and you can tell people that from me. You delivered the bacon. Keish Richards says, LOL, senior moment, huh? Thanks for your input. Well, thanks for your opinion. Yeah, we all love that. No, that's good. I'm glad you thought that was funny, but it's true. It's true. I'm rapidly approaching old age, so I feel like I'm going to have a head start. If I make it till then, I feel like I'm going to have a head start on it. Guy Incognito is here. Guy Incognito says, hi. Hi, from High Incorporated. All rights reserved. Yes. Here's Matthew Harding says, can you please discuss how a company's budgeting for next year may affect hiring at this time? Well, I can try, Matthew. I mean, that's kind of a generalization. Listen. Okay, in the case of companies who don't know what they're doing, which is a lot of the big ones, they have budgets and, they'll have like a fiscal year that doesn't start at the same time as a calendar year. It usually starts like on 4 months delay, but that varies. And, they'll set out budgets for each department, right? It's sort of an accountant's wet dream. It gives them the illusion of controlling things when really they don't. But they do in their own mind, and that's the only thing that, they really need to feel happy with themselves. So what they do is they issue these budgets, and then, each department has a certain amount of discretionary spending, right? So depending on the deal, depending on the setup, a manager of a functional department will be able to say, look, I need to hire another person. I just need it, right? We got too much work coming in. We need it. Other times they hire people for political purposes, right? The principle that, whoever supervises more employees is therefore better and has more authority. That is a real thing. It's all an illusion, of course, but that's what some people act on. So you get all kinds of motivations. And, you could either spend that money redecorating your office, or you could spend that money hiring more people, right? Different people go different ways on that, right? You could also spend it on other things, right? Obviously. So that does affect the budget. Hire, like you, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but employees are an expense in the same way that you have to pay money every month to keep the lights on, to pay your electricity bills, right? Or pay rent. Company has to pay for employees. They regard them exactly the same way. That's the origin of the term human resources. They're regarding employees as resources like any other resources, like inventory, like property, plant, and equipment, like consumables, like energy and that raw materials, that kind of thing. So, you could either have more inventory, maybe whenever you're running a warehouse, and maybe half the time they ask you for parts, you have to say, sorry, we don't have that on our shelves right now. We're out. I'll have to see if I can scrounge one up for you. Maybe people get tired of that after a while, and they say, hey, you guys never have any parts. You're supposed to be a warehouse. What the hell's the point of having a warehouse if you never have any of the parts we need? So you say, listen, I think we need to increase our inventory levels, based on urgency, blah, 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 right? That comes out of your budget. And you could either do that, or you could hire another person to work in the warehouse, right? So they're all competing for the same funds, basically. So that's how that works. It's impossible for me anyway to be any more precise about it, because it does vary considerably depending on what industry we're in, what country we're in, what size of company we're in, whether the company is pure play or it's a conglomerate, and what their corporate culture is. So and whether your boss is an idiot or not. That's a major factor right there. They may choose to redecorate their office for the third time, So that's how that works. It is a factor, but it isn't a major factor. The bottom line is that if an employee is mission critical for the company, they need someone who can do this now. Then in smaller companies, you tend to not worry as much about a formal budget and say, like, look, this is a legitimate business need. We need to fill this hole now, And as long as the owners or whatever are, on board with it, okay, fine. Yeah, that's important. We can't operate with like a warehouse with no manager in it. We need a replacement now. We didn't think that we could afford them. We told the last person, we can't pay you more money. So they left, and that's left a vacancy. We need to fill it. We can't promote any people up into that role because that's taking critical people out of critical roles to fill the manager vacancy. We need to hire someone else from the outside. We need to hire them now, and we need to pay them the amount of money that they're going to need to stay. So I don't care what the budget says. This is important. So budgets can be overruled, and they do when they are when it's important. And accountants love that. Hopefully that makes sense. Guy Incognito says, if I get rejected for a job I could have done, is it okay to just reject their rejection and turn up anyway? Getting tired of it and feeling hopeless. Show up anyway with a bat is what I would advise. And if you know their name, write their name down the side of the bat when you get there so they can see it. And if they don't give you the job on the spot, then, you'll have to have words, if you know what I'm saying. Listen, if you get rejected for a job you could have done, congratulations, you're normal, okay? It's not a question of can you do the job or not. That's not why they rejected you. The reality is that, when they're interviewing for a job, for most jobs, it's not hard to come up with several people, certainly, that could all do the job. That's not like what really decides it. Every single person that they're interviewing, that they bring in for an interview, for example, can do the job, or else there would be little point in interviewing them, right? Because even if you like who they are, you still can't hire them because they can't do the job. They're just not qualified, right? You know what I mean? It doesn't matter how cleverly they answer these questions. If they're just not qualified, they can't do it, right? So, most people who get rejected, they could have done that job, right? That wasn't the issue, right? The biggest factor of all is that they got one job and they got many people that applied for it. So even if every single person who applied for it was like awesome, you still have to send all of those people but one home with a no. That's the problem, right? So it's not a reflection of your ability, okay? That's not what this is. When we get rejected, we tend to read into it, oh, we're no good. We got rejected because we're bad. We're unemployable. We have no value. We can't contribute anything. It's like, no, that's not what it is at all, right? It's simply a numbers game. They have to pick one person. Sometimes it's pretty much at random because everybody that they were talking to would have been okay. But you can only pick one. So that's the situation, okay? Guy incognito, that's what you're up against. So how do we win at this game? If you're playing the game of posted jobs, okay, you win by having good quality applications, meaning that they match the job posting and what they say they're looking for as closely as possible without diluting it, right? And then, you do a lot of applications. So each application is like a lead. It has potential, right? So the more of those you have, the more potential you have of getting a bite, right? I mean, I know you know this. It's very fundamental. So you have to have a quality and a quantity approach, and that's how you win at that game. That's why AI tools and things that can help you customize your resume very quickly. It's not that they can do a better job, just that they can do a faster job than you. They're really helpful in giving you many opportunities, right? Okay. And then on top of that, the hidden job market, if you have like big networks of people, that can maybe help, but a huge one is direct outreach, is going to the employer and saying like, listen, I know you guys do this work. You are also very close to where I live, and so you put those two together. That's why I'm really excited about being able to work for you. Now, if ever you're looking for someone who can do this and this and this, let me know, right? A lot of companies don't post jobs because they have people doing that anyway, right? Why would you go and post a job on a job board so you can get strangers applying when already people are like, beating on your door saying, hey, you guys are awesome. I'd love to work for you. I have these skills, whenever you need someone who's got those skills, here's my card, here's my resume, Those people, at least they've shown enthusiasm and awareness. You've also got a free sample of, their communication skills and how they present themselves, how professional they are, and how persuasive they are. You've gotten free sample. It's like a free sample of what it's like to work with them, right? So for the companies that get that, like, why ignore that and then just post a job? No. I'm looking for a stranger who hasn't shown any interest, and I don't know what they're like. It's like it doesn't make any sense, right? So usually those people that are doing direct outreach and stuff like that, they're further up the line than people coming in and applying officially, right? Okay, so that was Guy Incognito. I just got rejected. World ends with a whimper. Are referrals considered more by hiring managers than regular applications? How does it depend on the size of the company? It doesn't really depend on the size of the company that much. The only way it might is if it's a really big company and they have very stringent hiring principles. They've strong-armed everyone into following these hiring principles. That can only happen with support from the very top. In a lot of companies, you don't get that. You have official you have in-house recruiters. Like the recruitment and selection function is in-house. So you got your own employees who are recruiters who will assist to recruit people for the company, right? But that usually only applies to the worker level. It doesn't apply to anyone above. When they hire managers, a lot of times they don't get a recruiter in the process. Recruiters are used for, how can I put this? The unwashed masses. They're used mainly for the worker level, right? They don't usually let a lot of recruiters near higher level candidates because it's a bummer. It's a turnoff. You would rather have a productive conversation with your counterpart at the other company, and just have like an unstructured discussion about, does it make sense for me to come over there work for you? What are you guys looking for? What problems do you need solved? Why would you consider me? Things like that, right? I mean, that's far better than having some 21-year-old recruiter ask you like, so what are your weaknesses? It's like, screw off. You know what I mean? Like, why am I telling you this? Is because we're all managers here? No, it's because you can, even if you're a worker, you can take advantage of that same system. You contact a manager directly. You go outside the system, you contact them and talk to them. Or you contact an executive. That's certainly possible at small and mid-sized companies, which are most of the employers out there. Now, if you're talking about like Amazon or Microsoft or Apple or something, I mean, it's going to be hard to contact a celebrity CEO. You're not going to be able to do that. But like in almost every other company, you will be able to. And those are the people that can help you. These are the people that can hire you on the spot. You know what I mean? So that's why you would go to people above you. For the hidden job market stuff, you kind of have to go to people that are above your level, because the people at your level can't give you a job, right? You have to go to people above your level. They're the ones that have the power to help you. Right? Anyway, let me answer your question here about referrals. Like, listen, you want to hire an assistant, okay? You put up a job ad, you get a bunch of strangers that ad, they say, oh, I could be your assistant, right? Now, you don't know who these people are. They could be fine, upstanding people that are just being honest, in which case, right on. But they could also be crazy. They could also be criminals. Like, you have no idea, right? So it's a bit riskier, right? Now, let's say someone from your family, like, someone that you trust, or, if you work in a business and you're the manager, say your right-hand person, like that you've worked with for 10 years, and they're good, you get along really well, and you trust their judgment. Whenever you go off on vacation, they take over your job temporarily. They do a fantastic job. They know you. They know what you need, what you like, and you trust them. Now, if they say to you, listen, you need another assistant, or you need someone else, I've got someone who I think would be perfect for it. Okay? Would you tell them, no, I'm not interested in your recommendation. I'd rather post the job and interview strangers. Right? Does that make sense to do? No. Now, you're not going to give anyone the job because somebody referred them, but you might give them a chance. You'd say, okay, I need someone. I might as well check this person out first that you recommend. I'll give them a shot. Now, if they work out, if you meet with them, they do an interview and they look pretty good, you could say, okay, well, I think you're fine. This person who knows you that I trust thinks you're fine. So based on that, you know what? Let's just end this now and we'll hire you. Then I can get back to doing my real job, which is not hiring people. It's actually doing my work. And we can get you started as soon as possible. Right? The last thing I feel like doing is sitting in round after round of job interview, having endless discussions with recruiters and other people about which candidate do you think is better. You know what I mean? Paying for background checks and all this kind of stuff. It's like, I just need someone good. And if someone that I trust gives me a referral, I'll check them out first. And if they're fine, I'll probably go with them. So that's the power of referrals, right? You don't get the job because someone recommends you. You get first dibs at it. You still have to deliver the goods, but assuming you do, it can really open up doors for you, right? Now, sometimes you get that. If you know a million people and you're staying in your hometown, whatever. But in all honesty, those are a little bit rare. At least in my experience, they've been. Maybe if you work in a smaller town and in one industry, it's very limited, so everybody knows everybody. Then maybe there's more referrals happening, right? Balram says, I'm here. I have a question. Do companies prefer candidates having certificates? I feel that only learning is not the key to getting the role nowadays. No, and it never has been. It's not a question of that being true nowadays. It never has been like that. You get all kinds, okay? In certain industries, in certain regions, they put tremendous value on education. Sometimes it's justified. Sometimes it isn't. For example, in financial services, my understanding is that, they really care about whether you have like an MBA or something, way more than they should, because, you know what I mean? Like just knowing what an MBA enables you to do, it's really not necessary for a lot of things in financial services. You know what I mean? And other places where they should value education a lot, they don't, Now, you also get the opposite. You get employers that don't want you to have formal education. They want you to be capable, but they don't want you to have formal education because formal education is a transportable thing. That means that they have to pay you more money to keep you in this job, because if you're highly educated, you can easily up and leave and go somewhere else and get another job that pays you even more. You know what I mean? If you can do the job, but you have less education, that's good for the employer because then they don't have to pay you as much, because the odds of you being able to just leave and go somewhere else and get paid even more are lower, right? So you see all kinds. The other factor that muddies the waters is there's education and then there's education. There's education that's actually useful, that actually gives you a lot of abilities to do things that people would pay for. And then there's other types of education that sound fancy, but they're really Mickey Mouse things that don't really enable you to do anything that a lot of people are willing to pay for, So just the fact that you have education in itself doesn't really translate into being perceived as more valuable as a candidate, depending on what it is, right? It varies. Now, you can easily get very specific, concrete answers to precisely the thing that you're wondering about, your location and the types of education that you have in mind specifically, right? So if you're wondering, like, if this particular degree holds a lot of value in your particular city, like in one industry or something, you can find that out by using things like LinkedIn. You might have to get LinkedIn Premium, but you can find that out. You do a search for that qualification in that city, like you geographically limit the search results to your city. You do a people search. You find all the people that have that degree, right? Like it's a match. If you look for that degree and you do a people search, you're going to find the people that either have it or they're currently studying for it, right? And of the ones that have it, look at what they're doing. Look at their career track. You can see their profile. Look at what job they're in now. Like I've said before, are they pumping gas and serving coffee? Or are they executives at large corporations? That'll give you an idea of like, whether that education is valued or not. You know what I mean? So, you can get specific answers by doing these specific queries. But it does vary. Darren Scott Wilson says, what is your vision of an ideal hiring system where everyone looking for a job finds one quickly and any company looking to fill a role finds the right person with little nonsense? It all just works. Okay, well, the first part of that, I've never thought of that. Like an ideal hiring system where everyone looking for a job finds one quickly. I don't know. I don't really care. I've never put any thought into that, so I don't know what that would look like. All I know is that it would be rather complex, probably more complex than someone like me could just easily figure out the solution for. The other thing is that I don't think everyone that needs money needs a job. A lot of people are, they do various forms of entrepreneurship and it's right for them and it works out better. I encourage people to do that. Jobs are not like this universal thing that is the solution for everyone. There's other ways to make money. And a lot of people, especially nowadays, a lot of people take those other alternate methods. What's important is that you can create value. I mean, we need more people in society that can create value. Wherever you are, your country, your region needs someone like you who can create value. You're not just going to go and work as some grunt in like a big, operation, whether it's manufacturing or any other industry. They're not looking for that. They're looking for people that will start an industry here, create economic value here. And then you start hiring people because you've got so much work to do and so much money to be made. You need help, right? That's what they're looking for. Now, the second part of that, okay, that's something I'm a little bit more versed with. Any company looking to fill a role finds the right person with little nonsense, and it all just works. Okay, well, the way that most people do that now for anything above the worker level is with networking, and that tends to be a very good method of doing it, because in that world, there are many different sort of vectors for hiring somebody. One is people that actively seek you out and say like, hey, I've got some stuff I can offer you, and I know you're good. And you constantly have a stream of those people approaching you. And a lot of those people, you try and hire. So when you might not have a position open now, but you might have been really impressed with somebody that sort of said, hey, I'd love to work for you. Let's get together. So when you do have an opportunity, usually you call on those people first, right? The second thing is that you're always keeping an ear to the ground in your industry. So you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. You'll have some awareness of what's happening in sort of your local circles. And if you hear that some person in the business, like some manager of some, entity or function of some entity in your business environment is like leaving or disgruntled or whatever, and you can find that out through various means. You approach them and say, hey, we are looking to expand. We would love to have the kind of operation that you were running over there at the competitor. Come work for us. And if you think that you can build that again for us, it's like, yes. So that kind of works out really well. Now for the worker level stuff where you're just looking for people that aren't very proactive about these things, they respond to job ads and things. You'll always have job ads, but that's kind of a last resort. You always want the people that show enthusiasm and initiative and awareness, and they come to you. That's the ideal. That's the first choice. Are the people that have already demonstrated that stuff. So that's why I encourage people to be more proactive and get in the hidden job market. At least do things like direct outreach. At least do that. It's almost like job search in that you're peppering, the place with like, tons of applications. You're peppering the business environment with like, tons of messages to various people. It's the same kind of idea, but you hit upon matches sometimes. So it's worth doing. Where'd that question go? Oh, right there. So does that make sense? Like, I mean, I'm not an economist, so I mean, I'm sure there's more elegant solutions, far more than I could come up with, like at a higher systemic level, but I'm not the person to give you those. Okay, finds the right person with little nonsense. It all just works. Well, by nonsense, I assume you mean like friction. It's just efficient. Tong says, "Hi Bill, how much importance do you place on a LinkedIn photo? If for junior roles, what would be a good approach for choosing a photo? Should it be very formal or something casual and friendly?" Here's what I would suggest. Okay, get a headshot. So that's like your head and your shoulders. Okay. And, it depends on your industry, what the norm is for your shirt or your grooming or any of that, like facial hair, whatever. That's going to vary by industry. Try and look like people look 1 or 2 levels above you, if possible. That's like when you don't know anything, that's usually, you can't go wrong. You try and look a little bit like your manager. So if you've got like a reverse mohawk or something and your manager, has like a handlebar mustache, then, get like a handlebar mustache and you'll look like you're appropriate for the job. You know what I'm saying? Now, in the photo, try and look friendly and approachable. So you don't have to be like smiling with big, brilliant teeth or anything or partying or whatever, but just look like someone that they would want to talk to. Because I've seen a lot of photos on LinkedIn and other places where people look like, they look like really mean and nasty. They look like, really intense. And it's like, if I saw you in like a room or just in a place, like I would not want to approach you. I might get my ass kicked or my head bitten off or something, You don't look very friendly and approachable. So that's kind of the key thing. Okay. Nice clean headshot. You can take it with your, like if you got a smartphone camera, so you just take it with that. Nice neutral background, not like what I have. Go up against a wall where it's a kind of a neutral sort of background. Get a friend just to snap a picture of you. Good headshot. That's all it takes. And that would be professional and appropriate. Hamza says, "What's up, man? Remember me? Are you the what's up dude?" I don't want to assume you're a dude. You could be an it/they or they/that, or I'm not sure. But hey, you're here and that's all that matters. So I'm glad you're here. If you got any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Tong says, "Using it for making connections with hiring managers in the field." Okay. Yeah, same thing applies. Just a good, nice professional headshot. You look friendly and approachable. You don't look uncomfortable. You don't look pissed off. You don't look drunk or confused. I've seen all kinds, so that should be fine. Louisa, "Hi Bill, I had an interview with a small company a month ago and their HR recently contacted me saying because of delay from their client side, they put on hold recruitment for this role. They said they'd like to contact me again when they have more clarity on this. What should I make of this?" Okay, Louisa, the only thing that's real here is their behavior. It doesn't matter what they say. What's their behavior? Their behavior is that the process basically ends here. Okay? Now, maybe in the future, who knows? Something else might happen, but at least for right now, the process has ended with these people. You never really know what happened on their end. All you know is that it's over, right? So here's what I think you should do, okay? Number 1, don't think about it anymore, okay? Don't overanalyze it. And, the worst thing you can do is take this as some kind of reflection on your value as a potential employee. Like just because these people basically said no, it has no bearing on how, you can contribute to a company. You're employable, you're valuable. the timing with these people just wasn't right, or they had it into their heads that they were looking for something else, right? That's fine, Now, the thing is, when they say, it's on hold, it could be legitimately on hold, okay? I don't know. But on hold is a standard kiss-off when maybe they've selected someone else, or, you know what I mean? Like it's just over for you, right? They don't want to say, we're not hiring you because you're no good. You didn't meet our standard. That sounds rude. So instead they employ several euphemisms for that. And one of them is it's on hold, right? Every once in a while, the job is actually on hold, right? But most of the time it isn't. You don't know. You'll never know. Don't worry about it. You're doing fine. Just keep moving, okay? You're going to get a lot of these. Everyone gets a lot of these. I don't care if you're Albert Einstein, you're going to get a lot of these. That's just how it goes. And at the end of the day, think of it this way. For each role, they can only select one person. If they're hiring for one job, you can select one person. Even if 1,000 people apply, 999 of them are going home with a no. Because even if they interviewed 10 people for it, and all 10 were fantastic, you still have to send 9 of those people home, right? So think of it that way, right? So that's what I would say about it, okay? We don't know what happened. We don't care what happened. Just keep moving. You're going to find something soon, and it'll happen sooner if you just spread a wide net and keep moving forward. Don't keep looking back and wondering why things happened or didn't work out. Always be looking forward, okay? That's what I'd say. Best of luck to you, Louisa. There are 20 people here. You guys are all awesome. Thank you for being here on this Friday afternoon, listening to me waffle on with absolutely no script. I'm just here to answer your questions. So if you got any questions, get in the chat, let me know. I'll do my best to try and help you out if I can. I'm just adjusting my cameras like I do continually. It can never be too bright. That way it looks like I'm broadcasting from heaven. Heaven / my office, same difference. So, yeah, a lot of people, job search is one of those things that unless you've had a lot of experience at it, you really don't understand it. The other thing is, unless you've actually hired someone yourself, then you won't understand a lot of it, like why they do things that they do, right? Once you get into the position of being on the other side of the table, then all of a sudden it starts to make sense why they do things, right? Because it seems effing idiotic, when you've never been on the other side of the table. You know what I'm saying? Even stuff like job interviews, like when a lot of the questions they ask, they seem totally asinine. A lot of times they are, but they really come across that way, even when sometimes they're not, because you don't understand what they're probing for, what their perspective is, So it's a matter of understanding that, and I'm going to try and help with that. Darren Scott says, this is a great way to spend a part of this Friday. Well, thank you, Darren Scott. That's very high praise. I appreciate that. If you would like me to talk about anything in particular, let me know. That's not brandy or anything, by the way. Someone asked me about that. To them, it looked like a whiskey decanter, or one of those whiskey glasses, whatever you call them. That's not what it is. This is ginger ale. Canada Dry, if I could be any more Canadian. Actually, if I could be any more Canadian, I'd put a big Canadian flag right behind me. Would you guys appreciate that? I think I'd lose all the Americans, right, instantly, just in the space of 30 seconds. Quiche Richards, which I love your name, by the way. Quiche, it's like a pie made of eggs, right? That you eat cold. Brilliant idea. Can't wait to find out who invented that one. When I got laid off 2 years ago, I kept looking back and fell in a deep depression. Oh, that sucks. I came out of it this year, but the startup I work for in 2025 laid me off too. It looks like you've had some bad luck there, Quiche, you know? It continues. So I feel blessed to have found your channel. Maybe I can get my optimism and confidence back. Well, Quiche, let me put it to you this way. First of all, know this. You're awesome, okay? Also know this. You're highly employable, highly valuable, okay? You know, don't let any of these clowns or any life event convince you that you're not, okay? The fact that you've been employed, you've had these at least 2 jobs, you know, that shows. I mean, you were adding a lot of value for these employers. That's why they kept you there for that amount of time. You know what I mean? Listen, depending on what industry you're in, some industries are experiencing a boom, other ones are experiencing a bust. It's like that sort of cycle, right? Some industries are cyclical. There we go. What the hell was that? Another senior moment. Some industries are cyclical, ladies and gentlemen. Others, it's more random, but they go up, they come down, they go up, they come down, that kind of thing. When all of those line up, you get a recession, right? That's the idea. So there's at least several that are kind of on a downswing right now. I believe there's still a few that are on the way up, right? So, you know, it depends where you are. Despite that, the other thing is that, you know, people are hiring at certain levels all the time. You know, you get attrition, you get people retiring, all this kind of thing, right? So that does happen. The amount of people that they're hiring goes down, but it still continues, right? Sometimes they will stop hiring officially, but yet they're hiring through unofficial circles. The hidden job market, they're still hiring there in the background, right? So that's the thing. You know, so Quiche, you're doing fine. Now listen, okay? There's several things you can do. What might be nice is if you want to get into it with me, first of all, explain to me just in a nutshell, in the broad strokes, what you've done. If you've looked in the hidden job market, you looked in the posted job market, you know, there's other things too. You know, there's things you can do in the meantime while you're out, things that not only sort of make you feel more confident in yourself and make you feel more optimistic, but also yield real results in terms of job opportunities or other opportunities to make money, right? For example, some people start side hustles and things when they're between jobs, and that's what gets them on their way. And next thing you know, they never end going back and working, right? Now, that's not everybody, but that's some people. So let me know kind of the broad strokes of what you've done, and we can go from there. Hamza says the job market in Norway, okay? Is that like a commentary on when I was saying things are cyclical or, you know, on the way up or on the way down? Don't know much about Norway. I know they were invaded in World War II. I know that Roald Amundsen was from Norway, who got to the South Pole first and I think he was the first person through the Northwest Passage, I think. Other than that, I don't know much about Norway. Is it King Haakon, was it, of Norway? And black metal. So, you know, that pretty much covers your bases. That's like more than enough contribution to the world right there. Especially the black metal thing. You got a lot of interesting people with a lot of time on their hands in the dark, cold forests of Norway. Read the comment above. Well, the comment above says, "What's up, man?" That was your last comment. If you're talking about optimism and confidence back, sorry, you'll have to spell it out for me. You and King Haakon, if I got that right. Yeah, so we got to the end of the chat, so let me know if you guys have any questions. Key Trisha says, thank you so much. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm going to make accounts on other job platforms. And so what you said, direct message higher ups and companies I would like to work for. Your advice is great. Well, thank you. Now, okay, so here's the deal. I need to actually think about a good analogy so that when I say it, it makes a lot more sense. But I'm just going to blurt out the basic thoughts, even though they might be incoherent. How does one get a job? How does one get picked for something? Well, one way is to enter a competition. That's what posted jobs are. Here, send in your demo of your talent and we will select the most talented ones, right? And we all know that it's not the most talented ones, it's the most politically correct, politically oriented one and there might be some emphasis on talent too. You could do it that way. Or you could get hired or get selected by simply being the only person who showed up. You didn't have to beat anyone. You just showed up where everybody else didn't. That's like the hidden job market. There's a lot of opportunities out there. It's not on the radar. So most people, they don't show up. They're not aware of the opportunity. Or if they are, they don't know how to go about doing it, right? But you get those not by being the best and brightest, usually. It's by being the one that showed up. Now, you might think that's silly. If you're not picking the best and brightest, then what the hell are you doing? What they're looking for is they're looking for things like enthusiasm and awareness and the ability to take initiative. Those are very valuable skills. Every time I say something, I'm putting my fist down on the desk. That's why it's causing the camera to vibrate like that. Right? So that's the name of the game for the hidden job market. It really feels like that's how it's structured. You get rewarded for going outside the rules, outside the plan. You're not following some process, right? It's more like sales. You have the right to speak to anyone you want. There's nothing that says you can't talk to that person. If you feel that you can't, then it's some artificial thing that you've got an impression from somewhere, but that's fake. It's not true, right? Now, they have the perfect right to not want to reply to you, right? That's fine. But if you know how to write something that, is professional and appropriate and it goes to the right person at the right time, the odds of them responding favorably go way up. Right? That's the idea. So those are the skills you develop. Okay. Now you can do networking in person or you can do it online. Again, there's all kinds of ways of doing it. You can go over a network of people you already know, or you could reach out blind to people, right? There's all kinds of ways of doing it. But the thing is, it's like the Wild West. You can do what you want. And it's actually a tremendous advantage. Because if you think you can't get the attention of people or all the people that can help you, they're not listening to you or they don't know you exist, you can contact them and then they'll know you exist. It's just a matter of building up the skills if you don't have those. Hamza says, no, I skipped over this, didn't I? I'm on LinkedIn. I'm going to make accounts. I would like to work for. Your advice is great. Well, thank you for saying that, Keish. I appreciate that. Hamza says, I just wanted to say that there are a lot of racism in the job market. Well, I'm glad you said that. That really helps. Hamza, I got an internship with a possible job offer. We didn't click and they didn't respect my religion, Islam. Okay. I don't understand why they would need to respect your religion to give you a job. Anyway. I don't really want to get into a bunch of political stuff. I try to avoid all that. Tong says, a company invited me to an interview next week and they said that they will request me to do a task related to the job. Is it appropriate to ask them to clarify what type of task this is? I would assume they wouldn't tell you that, or that kind of defeats the purpose, but I'm not sure. There's no harm in asking. If you're dealing with a recruiter, I would have a phone call with the recruiter. If you like, as opposed to an email, I would try to call the recruiter and say, hey, got your message. Excellent. Just confirming I can make it. What's the dress code? What time should I be there? What's this task that, they said? Is that something you can share with me, that I have an idea of, what's going to be expected? Do I need to bring anything for it? Like stuff like that, right? And maybe they'll tell you something, right? There's no harm in asking. But don't be surprised if they say, no, we can't speak about it, or else that would kind of taint the results, right? Like if one person has been forewarned what it is and another person isn't, or hasn't been told what it is, that might not be fair. So, you know what I mean? Just don't be surprised if they can't volunteer anything. But there's no harm in asking. Tong says the job description is pretty vague, so don't want to walk in there and be bewildered. Okay. I guess that makes sense, but as I said, you can ask. But I'm assuming that the reasoning behind doing this is to give people a blind test. That might not necessarily be the case, but that's something that I wouldn't be surprised if that's what it was. Okay, so try you can, and otherwise, don't stress out. Just go in there, do your best. I mean, that's all you can do, right? Hamza's going on about racism here. Okay, good. Right, get in the chat and let me know if you have any questions. We've passed the 1 hour mark. I can go for another 15 minutes at least. So if people want me to, let me know if you have any specific questions about stuff, job interviews, that kind of stuff. Let me know. If you are looking for how to do this hidden job market stuff that I'm talking about, how to do the posted job market I've been talking about, all my advice is all in one place right there. You could check out that course. That's got a lot of stuff that I've shared on my channel, but it also has a lot of stuff I haven't, like some of the specifics of the hidden job market stuff. So if you're interested in that, learning that with me, that's always an option. And I have videos that talk about the course so that, it's as transparent as possible for people. So another course I have that people here might be interested in is this one. That's if you want to sort of climb the ladder, get promoted at work, especially if you want to get promoted into management type circles. One of the things you usually have to tack on top of technical skills are communication skills. That's what they put a lot of value on, a lot of emphasis on. So this course is sort of my version of how to improve your communication skills. I shared basically everything that I learned about communication skills from going from a supervisor to a CEO on sort of my corporate journey. So if you're interested in that, you can check out that course. There's links in the description. And finally, I don't know how many people here this applies to, but if you want to learn business, which is the scientific study of how to make money, check out this for $100 US. Not 100,000, 100. Someone asked me if it was 100,000. They started talking about it like it was 100,000. I said, no, it's $100, So check that out. That's also especially useful for entrepreneur types. You want to learn business principles, but you don't want to go back to school, spend all the money, take all the time. Excuse me. So that's one solution. Any tips to tap into the hidden job market? Yeah, learn all you can about it. I've mentioned it quite a lot so far in this session. So I did a video about a month ago. You can see it on my channel. It's about 45 minutes long. It's called How I'd Get a Job. And I go through 11 different methods of getting a job. And, not that you necessarily have to do all 11 or anything, but they may give you ideas. You might adopt one or two of them to supplement what you're already doing, right? Because some of them can be quite effective. So you could check that out. As I said, if you really want to learn it all properly with me, I've got a course that covers it. It's very hard to talk about it on a YouTube channel because unlike job interview questions and stuff, it's very hard to package like a 5-minute bit of information because the hidden job market stuff, it's all these principles that are all stacked on top of each other, right? And it's like the weak link in the chain. You really have to like understand all of them for it to work. So it's very hard to get someone to sit while you cover all the principles, you know what I mean? So it doesn't really lend itself to YouTube videos. So I put it in a course. That's where I have that stuff, because at least you can lay it all out beginning to end, one kind of piece at a time, right? And see how everything fits together. So there you go. But I mean, learn about like ChatGPT is like a good starting point to like learn anything, right? It's a great window to like get you started. And then, you know, beyond that, you would like maybe look at other sources, and then you would try things. That's a very, very important part of like learning stuff like the hidden job market, and developing those skills, right? It's about trying stuff, having that experience base. Confidocene is here. Confidocene says, are case studies effective for learning business? Yeah, it's pretty much a big part of how you learn business. I have to do them for my business course for engineering. Yes, that like when they teach business in university, case studies are a big part of it. It's not the be all end all. I mean, the principles are the be all end all, but what they do is they put things into case studies to try and simulate a real world type thing. The problem is with business, you see, the way business is set up is that there's many different perspectives on business. I'll give you an example. There's the accounting lens. Accountants look at everything as a cost, right? And then they add up like, you know, all the money, and then they tell you if you've made a profit or not, right? So that's one way of looking at a business operation, okay? But it's incomplete. It's not the right way. It's one way, but it's totally incomplete. Now, marketing is another way of looking at a business operation. You look at like, are you serving your market? Are you reaching your market? Are you convincing your market? Like a market is a group of customers, right? So let's look at everything that we do through the lens of like customers, you know? Is that like the right way of looking at business? No, it's incomplete. Now, if you put an accountant in charge that only understands accounting, you run the business right into the ground, because everything is a cost to be reduced. And they don't understand things like customer satisfaction. That doesn't figure into accounting. By the same token, you look at everything from the marketing perspective. All you care about is the customer. You'll delight your customers and go bankrupt doing it, you know? So it's like, that's not the right way either. So the way you look at business in the real world is you learn all the different perspectives, and you try and understand, like, you know, I'm looking at it from different points of view. Which point of view wins out for this particular question or this particular issue, you know? So it's impossible to come at it from like, you know, one perspective and then just, you know, say this is the right answer and then implement that in the real world and have it actually work. It's very hard, you know? So case studies are kind of a method of learning it where they sort of artificially say, here's what's going on. We're going to put some limits on this. Now, based on what we're trying to teach you, what would you do here, right? And it's the beginnings of being able to look at something from multiple perspectives. The beginnings of it. And all case studies, by definition, you can't simply lather, rinse, repeat, because, you know, even if you look at exactly the same situation, you know, like if every variable was the same as what you're struggling with in the real world, it still doesn't hold up because that was a different time, you know? The case study you studied wasn't the thing that's happening next week, right? Because they couldn't simulate next week, right? So you'll never get that deterministic sort of solution. It's all about like taking your best guess based on fundamental principles. Economics is a different lens, right? Like microeconomics or whatever. So that's how they learn business anyway. And congratulations for doing business and engineering. Engineering and business are two completely opposite frames of mind, right? It'll be a good stretch for you to look at the world not exclusively through an engineering perspective, but through a business perspective. I'm someone who's got an engineering degree, who's had a career in business, so I know what I'm talking about. It'll really open your mind to considering many other factors, including a lot of factors that cause engineers to fail in the real world. Fail at getting jobs, fail at winning contracts, fail at succeeding in the business of engineering. So go in there with an open mind, learn all you can. And you will be a formidable talent if you can absorb all that stuff. That's confidacine. So best of luck. Fred Y says, been 2 months since I started my new job. Thanks for the advices. Okay, great. I'm glad you're prospering there, Fred. That's good to hear. Tong says, tips on dealing with rude interviewers. I had a witch tell me my answer to motivation for working there was vague and generic. Another time, some lovely lady said I shouldn't apply for a job if I don't know the basic of her technical questions. How should you respond to these snide remarks in an interview? Well, Tong, I would be lying if I told you that I always had the perfect answer for that kind of stuff. That has been my weakness. I tend to, put it this way, in my mind, I tend to not suffer fools gladly. That's my description of it. I think other people would describe it differently, that I just have a lack of patience or a bad temper. But yeah, I've encountered those too, personally, like years ago, having really nasty, officious recruiters who think it's like they could say it's perfectly okay to just say, anything to anyone, just no matter how tremendously cuttingly rude, they would say, it's a little Hitler syndrome. These people are given a little bit of power. They have the power to decide who gets a job and who doesn't. And that goes right to their head. It becomes their entire sense of self-worth. And God damn it, they're going to throw that power around. They're going to make their presence felt. And this is how they do it. It's usually a compensation for being so goddamn ineffectual in every other aspect of their life. So that's what you're probably dealing with, right? Or they're just jealous and they're bitter that they are recruiters when that's not what they set out to do in their career. So that being said, how do you respond? This was a great thing for people to practice when they do mock interviews, okay? I've been an advocate of every job seeker. If you want to prepare for a job interview and you want to do really well in a job interview, the way to do it is practice. Practice makes perfect. I don't mean working by yourself in front of a mirror. I'm talking about you practicing with another person. Get your sibling or your best friend or your parent or whoever to do mock interviews, pretend interviews with you. They're the interviewer, they're interviewing you, they're asking you questions that you don't expect. Give them a list of questions or tell them to make up their own. You could even get them to simulate a rude sort of question. And that's where you can test your answer. You have a pre-prepared answer, or at least a pre-prepared approach for that kind of thing if it happens, right? Okay. So, your question was, how should you respond to these snide remarks interview? Well, it's tempting to just keep it real. You strap on your knuckle dusters and you just go to town. That would be, that a lot of people I think would have a fantasy of doing that. But, I don't know. I really don't know. It's not something I've worked on or thought about that much. I can't tell you what to do. It really depends on whether you believe that burning bridges is a thing, or you realize that, okay, there are more fish in the sea here. If this person is saying really insulting personal remarks to me, I'm going to shut this down. And depending on your personality, you may be quite good at that actually, or you might be extremely timid and not want to do that. I think a blanket response is to say, well, I apologize for clearly frustrating you to this degree. I clearly have said something, that you're not okay with. I'm not 100% sure what it was, but I apologize. You know, it also depends on if you believe at that moment if the interview's over or not. Like if you think that, okay, that's it, they've rejected me, or there's still a chance, right? So, I mean, that would also affect how there's too many variables for me to really give you that much on this. I would just thank them for their time and leave unless there were mitigating circumstances. I mean, the other thing is that, like, I was mentioning this a couple of live streams ago. They used to do something called a stress interview, and I haven't heard about that for years. I don't know if that's fallen from favor or what, but it was an intentional thing where you would go to a job interview and they would intentionally try and stress you out. So they would say like borderline inappropriate things, and they would behave in a borderline offensive, abusive way. And it was intentional. It wasn't like this. It wasn't that these people didn't know what they're doing. It was a very calculated, crafted kind of thing. And it was to see if they could push your buttons and get a rise out of you. And there are some jobs where like that's important. I imagine if you want to be a 911 operator or something, or you want to work the customer counter in certain industries, that they want someone with a very thick skin who might have to handle abusive people or very difficult situations. And you can't lose your cool. You can't sort of go to pieces, So they would do these stress interviews. And the thing is, they wouldn't tell people it's a stress interview. So I'm not sure if that's like now against the rules or something, but this was a thing. And so you would have to prepare for those. Now, I've never worked in a job where you get a stress interview personally. So I've never had one, but I know other people have. And, there's things you can do specifically to prepare for those. I don't like to talk about that because I have no personal experience with it. I've never given a stress interview and I've never attended one, so I'm not sure. But it's almost like you would use the same techniques there for your situation, Tom. You would kind of like not get upset. You try and like, thanks for your opinion kind of thing, And the default kind of response to a lot of things is like to smile. Someone says something cutting and you say, okay, well, that's an interesting response, And then other techniques are like assuming that you can still reason with the person, they're not yelling at you, is to try and turn it around and say, why would you say that? That's the instant thing that turns anything around. Like, why would you ask me that? Or why would you say that? Or like all of a sudden it takes the spotlight on you and it puts it back on them, Like they say, well, you're not very good at this. And you say, oh, why would you say something like that to me? It just kind of like it instantly turns it around. I mean, there's all kinds of techniques. I don't really know what they are, but you can easily look that up, And since there's no other questions for right now, let's do an experiment here. Okay, so I went to a job interview and the interviewer made a comment to me that was tremendously rude, that insinuated that I wasn't qualified for the job and that, they'd seen all they need to see. I was a non-starter. What should be my response? This is just a for instance here. Okay, so this is what ChatGPT says. It tends to give very generic kind of basic advice. Stay calm, professional, even if it's stung. Your best move is to maintain composure. If you show that you're rattled, it could make the situation worse. Yeah, easier said than done, but true. Take a deep breath. Let's go. Hold your ground and keep your tone neutral. Ask for clarification. I'm sorry. I'm not sure I understand. Could you explain a little more about why you feel this way before I kick your ass? Something like that. This can be more constructive and help constructive feedback. Reassert your value politely but firmly and say, well, I'm not sure I see it that way. You see, I feel that I bring a lot of value, blah, blah, blah. You could do that. Here's an example. So you can do this kind of query yourself and see what it says. You might get some stuff out of here. But once again, the critical thing here is to practice this. Just having read that and knowing it does not mean that you can instantly behave that way on demand, right? When the moment arrives. Usually people are in shock to varying degrees, and just being able to instantly go into like a pre-programmed response doesn't happen automatically. You need to practice. So that reiterates, hopefully, the need for doing mock interviews to really master how to do job interviews. And that example is probably one of the best instances of something you would need to practice, right? Confido scenes, I would not want to work there. Yeah, exactly. If that's the quality of their interview. See, this is the thing that I don't understand. I've never understood this. Like, companies employ a PR department, right? Public relations, to ensure that the perception of them from the point of view of many stakeholders, not just the public, but like potential investors and regulators and other players in the business environment, you know, they're perceived in a very positive light, right? But yet, a lot of them seem to have a blind spot for job candidates. Job candidates are members of the public. Now, you know, the PR department will spend millions trying to convince you that this company is friendly, and you know they're listening if you have concerns, and they're there to help, right? And then you go and you interview with them, and you get some colossal officious prick interviewing you, like saying things like Tong was saying, totally unnecessary, but like really pissing you off, creating a ton of negative goodwill. And they don't seem to have a problem with this. They don't seem to recognize that as an issue. It's like, hello, member of the public, you know? I mean, I personally know people, and I have known people, that they've had like stories of this type of thing in their past that's inspired them to go on and try and put that company out of business. You know, they've taken a job at a competing company and made it like their life's mission to like put those guys out of business. And it's like an element of personal spite driving it all. You know what I mean? Be careful who you piss off, especially when you're doing it like so unnecessarily. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's just stupid on several different levels. I need to get that put on a shirt. Matthew Harding says, your Q&A sessions have been very helpful to me. Also, your salary negotiation videos should be taught in university. Well, thank you very much, Matthew. That's very high praise indeed. I appreciate it. I'm glad you've gotten some value out of it. Yeah, they should teach this more of this stuff. I always felt like in high school, they should teach high school kids about the hidden job market, you know, for a start. I think that a lot of people in high school that are teachers and principals and this kind of stuff, they're just not aware of it. So, you know, it just doesn't get discussed. So that's left to parents, I think. I think that parents who are tuned into the stuff will teach their kids about it. And the parents that aren't, it just never came up for them or whatever, they don't know that this is a thing that maybe their kids should know. So when you get to be in your early 20s, you kind of understand how things get done, you know? Yeah, there you go. So there's 16 people here. We're over the hour and a half mark, so I'm going to be winding this down. If there's any last minute questions, please ask them now or forever hold your peace. And I will answer them if I possibly can. In the meantime, check out my courses, especially this one right here. If you need help getting hired in terms of what to do and how you do things, how the hidden job market works and how you put yourself forward for those jobs. If you're struggling with that, that's in here. I will be back on Monday. I believe I'm doing another collaborative live stream on Monday with Abby from the YouTube channel Life Work Balance. She is a recruiter. She talks about stuff similar to what I talk about. We have slightly different perspectives on things, but that's what makes it interesting. And we answer questions together. So that's happening on Monday at around this time in the afternoon in North America. So come back then. And I also have my weekly live stream on entrepreneurship in the morning. If you're thinking of doing a side hustle or learning how to generate cash yourself without needing an employer to do it for you, because they're basically your agent. You say, listen, I have no idea how to convert my own value into cash, but I understand that you do. So let's have an arrangement where I don't have to learn how to convert my own value into cash. I'm just going to leave that to you, and I'm going to stay ignorant. And I'll tell you what, for your troubles, you can take the amount of value that I generate, which is this, and you can keep about this much of it, and you give me about that much of it, and we'll call it even. How's that? That's essentially what an employment contract is, right? So for a lot of people, that's fine, and that's right for them, and there's no problem with that. For other people, they're not happy with that arrangement, working under somebody else's thumb their entire life. They have creative ideas, they have innovative ideas, and they understand how to contribute and create something of value, whether it's a product or services, and they have a lot of potential to create a lot of value, if just given a chance. So for those people, entrepreneurship is another path for them. And I wholly encourage people to investigate that if that's kind of sounds appealing to you, right? It's not something that you can learn overnight. It usually takes a few years, but, with a little bit of experience, a little bit of training, and a bit of initiative to try your ideas and manage financial risk. Don't take big financial risks. You can achieve a lot. And your government of your country or your region of your country will love you because you are creating economic value for the place where you live. That's neither here nor there, but that's an interesting side note. So that's what we talk about on Mondays. So if you have any interest in that, come back on Mondays, and I have a live stream that we talk about that. That's an ongoing thing. Last couple of things, and then we wrap up. So let's see here. Tong says, in my high school, they did mock interviews with career professionals, but didn't teach anyone how to answer the interview questions. It was a colossal waste of time. I can believe it. I've seen kind of what they do in high schools near where I am, and it's a real head scratcher of how they come up with so much work that does absolutely no good. It really takes talent. Tong says, thank you for the stream today, as always. Well, thank you, Tong, for being here, and to Matthew, to Confidocene, Fred, Hamza, everyone who participated, Keish, right, Darren, and everybody. You guys are awesome. Guy Incognito, thank you for being here. Have yourselves a great weekend. If you're between jobs, if you're between jobs, try and force yourself to do something fun this weekend. You need to take care of your mental health. Not only is that a good thing in its own right, but it's an investment in your ability to kick ass a job search come Monday morning. Okay, so you gotta recharge the battery sometime. Okay, and I will be here next week if you have any more questions. Take care, guys. We'll see you on Monday. Have a good weekend.